Hey there, Dean Pelton. This is Eneash.
Hey, Eneash, this is Steven.
Steven, I had to think about that one for a while, but Dean Pelton, was that the Dean from Community?
That's the very same.
Awesome. Why are you Dean Pelton today?
A couple quotes made me think of him. When he's wondering what creative or surprising means in the bedroom, and then he's thinking about hair pulling, and he's like, but when he visualizes that producing a sexual response from her instead, that seemed to be booping on some internal sexual part of him that hasn't been booped before.
That was cute.
And then the students are talking about whipping each other for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And something inside him has an unusual feeling about that, but Keltham does not know what it is, and it is not his priority right now. The dean in Community is like, I don't want to say a sexual deviant. He's a sexually creative person.
Okay.
As it was put so eloquently in one episode, hey, you're openly gay, right? First of all, I'm not openly anything, and second of all, gay doesn't begin to describe it.
Yes.
But
he's wonderful.
Yeah, and then you see through a series of flashbacks, like all like the random shit that he's into, like Dalmatians and stuff. You see like the origin of those, and he's like, I hope this doesn't awaken anything in me. And then it always did. So prediction, he's going to be into whipping and hair pulling before this is all over. So,
I think that is a very solid prediction.
We got to talk about what we're doing here.
What are we doing here?
Well, it makes sense if you understand decision theory.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Is that the name of a podcast or something?
That's the name of this one, where we talk about Kelsey Piper and IMSIYUDT's glow fic called Project Lawful.
Heck yeah, we do. While we read this and talk to you guys about it most weeks, we can be supported on a Patreon that we kick 15% back to the original writers of this glow fic, and we really appreciate all the supporting of the arts that you guys do if you do that.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Oh, most weeks, because I missed last week. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be missing a week in June when I'm traveling.
Nice. Where are you going?
I am going to Vibe Camp over on the East Coast.
What's that?
It's some rationalists who are on Twitter decided you did it last year to have a camp where they all met up and just had a weekend together. And they're doing it again this year in a different place. And it's going to be a great time if it's like anything like what I've heard last year's was.
Awesome. I love that you're traveling to do all these things. It makes me happy. I'm seeing you flourish. It's great.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, I like when people are chasing their happiness. Not chasing in the bad way, but finding it, seizing it.
Right.
Yeah.
Jumping on it and grabbing it in their teeth and shaking it back and forth vigorously.
Like a dog who just caught the squeaky toy.
Or the dog that just caught the car.
Yes. All right. First and foremost, as far as pre-show stuff, Keiko's GitHub page works perfectly fine to render on my phone now, so the viewer app that we linked to briefly on Heroku is dead. Long live the GitHub page. And it's awesome. You can go to IMSIYUDT, the like first letter of all of the title.com, and it redirects you to Keiko's GitHub, where it's really nice. If someone hasn't looked at this yet, just do. Click the link in the show notes.
Yeah, it's great. He now has a section for all the unassigned reading, which is basically the rest of the thread that hasn't been organized into episodes yet. And apparently there's now also a foldable option where you can just skip right over math things or things you aren't interested in. So it's an amazing resource.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
We had a lot of feedback over the last 2 weeks. Honestly, not even all that much because we were gone 2 weeks, just because we asked for specific feedback and got a whole lot of it. So I'm going to try to summarize a lot of it rather than reading it directly, if that's cool.
That makes sense to me. Remind me what we asked for feedback on.
How should we handle math sections?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I liked some of the feedback. I did see that in the comments or in the discussion.
But first, before we do that, I think we should discuss our spoiler policy. Right now, in the Discord, I kind of have a policy of if it's stuff that is not revealed in Plane Crash yet, don't post it, because you and me are kind of learning about this world as we're reading about it, and it's really delightful and fun. But, as has been pointed out by a few people, specifically Numendil is who I quoted on it, Glowfic is pretty high context, like to the point where we had an entire episode before we started this podcast talking about what Glowfic is, so people get some context for what the heck we're reading. That's just the nature of the genre. Plane Crash was written in a way where you can understand it without having read a lot of the previous stuff, but there is a lot of stuff that the median reader, at least as the early parts of Plane Crash were coming out, would have read, according to Numendil. And the story is intentionally written in such a way that knowing these things is supposed to add to, rather than detract from, a reader's enjoyment. Enjoyment. That's how you say the word, right? Enjoyment?
That sounds right.
Sir McMillan said that it's arguably reasonable that if the story was written with the expectation that readers would already know, then those things are reasonable for posting here. Basically, I'm advocating a policy of stuff that is not revealed in Plane Crash, but that was written prior to Plane Crash should be okay.
Is there a way to look this up without like reading 2 million words?
Look what up.
Like Sir McMillan says that stuff that you already know or would go and look up background elements.
I'm assuming you could Google like Yudkowsky surreptitious head removers and find something.
Fair enough.
We specifically got a spoiler in the spoiler channel, but with spoiler tags. Although I said policy is if it needs spoiler tags, don't put it in the spoiler-free channel because, duh. Describing how people get alignments in the Glowfic universe.
Okay.
I just don't know.
So I like this. I have. Because this is a weird situation, right? Like, would it have been spoilerish when we did We Want More for Brian to know that Quirrell was Voldemort in the Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone book?
That would not be spoilerish because you're expected to know that going in.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, like, it's possible to read MOR without that, right? We're essentially reading MOR without having heard of Harry Potter. So, like, we're in that situation where, you know, granted, it's a lot harder to have not heard of Harry Potter than it is to have not read any background on this stuff. But what if I think this might be a good like compromise in the middle, because I don't want to make a third channel because people to have to decide which one they're going to post in or whatever. That sounds annoying. What if or what do you think of this suggestion? If stuff that is in spoiler tags in the non-spoiler channel is domain knowledge that isn't revealed in this story yet.
And that was revealed before Plane Crash was written,
right?
Specifically. Anything that comes out after Plane Crash was started is not fair.
Anything to the equivalent of Quirrell was Voldemort.
Yeah. Yeah, and can you imagine reading Worth the Candle without, like, knowing all the tabletop RPG lore? I think I'm with you. I personally want to find out what surreptitious head removers are by reading this work, because I don't know. That's just really enjoyable and fun for me. So I think I'm not going to be clicking on those spoiler tags personally, but I absolutely understand why that kind of stuff would be good to know. And like, if somebody pings me and is like, this is, outside of Plane Crash knowledge, but it really probably would help the podcast and your enjoyment to know it, then I will go ahead and click the spoiler tag and read it. But for the most part, I'm not going to. But I think, as you were saying, it should be okay to post in the spoiler-free channel as long as there's spoiler tags around it, and it came out before Plane Crash.
Yeah, and I saw, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago, somebody got like a week-long don't post in this channel because you posted a spoiler.
Yeah.
So like that's, I don't want us to like. There shouldn't be too much like as far as this story, I don't know. It's not as spoiler heavy yet. Or like spoilable yet as like Worth the Candle and Methods of Rationality could have been, right? Like, because if you say, oh yeah, Keltham, whatever, becomes a god, like, okay, like I guess I might have been looking forward to the surprise or whatever, but I don't actually. Maybe just because I don't care yet. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't want people to like have to sit there and worry like, oh, does this go in tags? Does this go in the other channel? Like, So I think just use reason. Use your best judgment, and we'll try not to be Nazis about it. The thing is though, like with the whatever it was, surreptitious head removers, like for all we know, that is a nod to another work that he wrote that will never be referenced in here, right?
Yeah.
So like if you're looking forward to learning what that is, tough luck, unless someone tells us.
On the other hand, I'd be okay with just not knowing what that is as well. So I'm willing to take that hit and, finding out someday when I do read further. But, if it is a thing that would be important to the podcast and really affect the enjoyment of the reading of the Plane Crash, then I would want to know it in that case.
Yeah, same. I would like to think that, because they're writing a story from scratch here. It didn't say start here and point to another book, Like at the top of MOR, he even says it would be helpful if you read the first few, or at least the first few books, or at least at the very least seen the first movie.
Yeah.
Like he's like, other than that, like you can pick it up, but some stuff just won't be as good. Since there was no preface like that, I'm assuming I know everything I need to know, which is fuck all. So
All right. Speaking of spoilers, I don't think we should talk about Worth the Candle spoilers anymore because someone said, "Why would you assume that everyone who listens to this podcast has read Worth the Candle just because you did it previously?" And I was like, "Okay, I guess that's true." Apparently, people have now heard of this podcast from not having listened to it up to this point.
Huh. Well, I'm happy to have you listening. I remembered saying something about Worth the Candle a couple weeks ago, but I can't remember what it was. Whatever it was, it wasn't, I think, too big of a spoiler, was it?
I don't remember what we said.
But I do know that it was something that was like, in the story. So sorry about that. We'll be careful.
Yeah,
That's
I don't want to.
Horrible's Voldemort.
in the original
Harry Potter.
Rowling Harry Potter, yeah.
So you're meant to worry that he might be in Methods of Irrationality.
Absolutely. A few smaller things. The one butcher says that regarding my hang up with Keltham thinking that he created a god, I think Keltham thought he called the attention of a god that might not have previously cared about the planet of Galarian, but was pre-existing in the universe, which is far more reasonable. I keep forgetting that there are many planets in this universe and gods floating all over the place.
See, I didn't really know that. I assumed it was kind of like all the gods of Earth history, right? Where, as far as I know, none of the ones I've heard of anyway care about other planets. Well, whatever. All the popular ones, right?
I think we got that like in the first or second week of the reading, maybe the second week, where Carissa mentioned something about the big nasty Cthulhu thing having eaten several planets already.
Oh, but I mean, planets, that could be Mars and, Venus. Doesn't mean that they're interesting, right? They're just rocks.
Oh, see, I assumed it ate it specifically because of the humans on it, like feeds on the psychic soul energy or whatever.
Galactus style. Yeah, fair enough.
Okay.
So yeah, he thinks he drew somebody's attention.
Yes.
All right.
We have two speculations on the info hazard that he flinched away from when he was flipping through the library. Gab Beeb says that perhaps it was simply a warning page, that this page contains dangerous knowledge, and he looked away before reading super boring heresy.
I don't think that the drugs authors, as he calls them, are smart enough to give disclaimers that this is dangerous knowledge unless it's heretical knowledge. So I was going to object, and then I withdrew my objection. But like they wouldn't say, by the way, this might be dangerous to know, unless it's like religious heresy. So in which case they actually might say that.
Yeah.
But then you wouldn't flinch and turn away. You'd just be like, you'd roll your eyes and turn away, right?
Well, because all you see is there's an info hazard below, and you're like, oh shit, and you look away real fast.
Oh, that's really funny. That's probably, how like the clergy thought about heretical thoughts on Earth 500 years ago. But they didn't use that language. It'd be really funny if they did. Like it was called info hazards and, dangerous memes and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I like Gorky's explanation more.
This is great. Read it.
The thing you saw in the book that would have made his brain not work usefully could have just been porn.
That's fantastic.
That's my headcanon now. Because I think we've observed that he can't use both his sex organs and his thinking organs at the same time.
Yes, and Gorky has clarified that even though a lot of people thought this was funny, he is dead serious about that.
No, I like it. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I want it to be true, and so I'll let it live as true in my head until proven otherwise for the fun of the story. The thing is, I feel like he would have said, he would have flinched away from something distracting that he didn't want to burn attention on. Is how he would have said it. Not info hazard, but unless info hazard was something that stirred his loins about how like horny all the girls here are or something, right?
Right.
That's not just pornography. That's just porn adjacent.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Or maybe it was like BDSM porn, And he was like, "Oh, what is this?"
Oh my.
Okay, let's get on to the math lectures discussion. Ask Who and someone else also, but Ask Who was the first person that I saw do this, clarified that there actually aren't that many full-on lectures. It's way less than 5% of the content, closer to 1%. Unfortunately, it's a bit front-loaded. So we're going to get, I guess, a number of these up front, and then after that, it's going to be mostly plot and character stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
I saw that like live in the chat, and I was reassured to see that because it makes sense to front load all this stuff, right? They're going to be working with it the whole time. But yeah, if it was going to be, a decision theory course half wrapped in a, half baked story, then not like that the story is half baked or whatever, but like just kind of like shrouded in the essence of a not developed yet story, I was going to be really bored. But I can totally, run with 1 or 2 more weeks like that.
Yeah. We asked specifically for feedback on should we continue doing this kind of thing or skip the math. The majority of the feedback that we got back said we would like this kind of thing. Mar Johnson is a patron and said on the patron comments saying that I, for one, really enjoyed you going over some of the theory. The podcast in general makes the reading much more enjoyable. With both the Glowfic format being new and the content being at times very dense, I would almost certainly have given up by now. You going over it again, talking about points, some of which I might have missed, and being enthusiastic about it, makes it much more enjoyable. There were a bunch of other people saying basically the same kind of thing. This was great as a refresher. It was the episode I hoped for. So I think we should probably keep doing it, at least as long as we can stand to.
100%. Yeah, I mean, with the, I like your implied caveat that unless it really starts to suck for us. But no, I mean, this is a good, maybe a good takeaway lesson that, if there's a content creator that you're enjoying is saying, leave us a comment if what about this or whatever. All it takes is one really enthusiastic person to really stoke the fire of me wanting to do this more.
Oh, cool.
Are you kidding? That invigorates me. That's awesome.
Yay!
So, yeah, I'm sold.
There were a couple people that said, basically, if this no longer sparks joy for you guys, don't do it just for our sakes, of course. Don't force yourselves. And I think it's good thing to keep in mind.
I hope that someone thought, I don't care if it sucks the joy out of your life, keep doing it.
It's good to be honest. We got to have some Kelthams in our audience too, right?
Right.
I don't know if Keltham would actually say that kind of thing.
He would try to convince you to find joy in it. Right.
I think he would try to incentivize you in other ways, perhaps through payments.
Yeah, not through pain, it turns out.
No.
Because that's not how he's used to being taught, so...
There were a couple people saying, for example, Gorky says that Eliezer's ability to convey rationality through fiction seems to have regressed heavily for this project. It was insufferable. And then Anna said that Keltham has this intrinsic love for the subject, which he desperately wants the students to have, which leads him to ask questions that they have no frame of reference for how to answer, leaving them lost and anxious instead of joyful. I agree. I still managed to find good in it, but it was hard to get through. And I think we get some explanation in this reading for what happened. So when we get to that, I will be more optimistic.
Yeah, totally.
Later this episode.
I don't know, just as a, I guess a comment on both of Anna's and Gorky's comments, Gorky's first, that Eliezer's ability to convey rationality through fiction has regressed. He's not, I think, conveying rationality the same way he did in Method's Rationality. Man, that's a lot of syllables. He's teaching decision theory, which is, subsumed in the umbrella of rationality, but it's not just that, right? It's read the sequences versus read this decision theory textbook.
Yeah, but there's good ways and bad ways to teach decision theory, and the sequences is a good way, and getting lectured at in a confusing way is a bad way.
I don't think that the sequences taught people decision theory.
I agree, but something like the sequences for decision theory would be good.
Well, I guess I'm wondering, some stuff might be just too esoteric for that, and decision theory might be one of those things.
Okay.
But that said, I like with Anna's comment too, that Keltham has a love for this subject, and we, in our other podcast, Debate and Conspiracy, we do the Less Wrong posts, and some of them are math heavy, but his enthusiasm is always heavy.
Yeah.
And I find that engaging, and those are in digestible 10-minute chunks or 10-minute readings. But yeah, I agree. His enthusiasm is Keltham's, or Keltham's rather is Eliezer's, and it is contagious. This is why in real life I never give someone shit, for liking something, whatever it is. I don't like pro wrestling, but if someone does, I'm not going to give them a hard time for it. Let people like stuff.
That's true.
Minus, the obvious caveats that you're all thinking of, like torturing kittens or whatever.
Yes. So here's a thing, and I'm probably going to not read all of this too because it's very long. You know how at the end of the episode we said, should we even talk about this thing? I think it's just a typo. And you're like, we might as well mention it because maybe we're wrong about it being a typo and our listeners can correct us. We were in fact very wrong about it being just a typo, and our listeners very much corrected us on this. Luna Warrior is the first one I pulled out. On the podcast, y'all thought in the human version it feels stranger to say that if I'm naked, that implies I'm wearing a shirt is extremely true about me because I'm not naked and I am wearing a shirt. Might have been a typo. It was not. It's helpful highlighting the difference
between logically implies and human version of implies.
Yes.
And in the human version, if I'm naked, that implies I'm wearing a shirt is just wrong. In logic, it's true when applied to Keltham at that moment. he's challenging intuitions.
In logic, the word implies is a function. It's something like a plus sign or an equal sign. It means a specific thing. When you say A implies B, that returns a true value if either A is true and B is true, or A is false. In that case, we just don't care about B. We don't even look at B. The only case where implies function returns false is when A is true and B is false.
See, this is super counterintuitive, right?
It very much is, yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I totally get why people who felt kind of bogged down during this. I'm stoked on anyone who enjoys the sort of mathy bits. I will do my best to enjoy them as well, but some of it is just seems like the juice isn't worth the squeeze. It's a lot of work to understand something that's oh, okay. Oh.
Yeah,
but that's just how it feels to me, a stupid muggle. To people who know stuff and can enjoy it better, that's different. So
it must be valuable for some reason. Yeah. Sir McMahon said that propositional logic doesn't have the capacity to deal with counterfactuals, as opposed to English, which has them all the time. Then that's why that sentence feels so jarring.
Oh, how fun! And their language doesn't have a word for counterfactual.
Yeah.
That's definitely not a coincidence.
It was also pointed out that even though it is true that A implies B, and that sentence is very true of Keltham, it is not valid. So it is true, but not valid. And I expressed some saltiness that in the end of a giant lecture about capital V validity, we are given an example of something that is true, but not valid without it being flagged as such for the reader. But I guess that was part of Keltham trying to maximally befuddle his students. So shame on you, Keltham.
Well, it worked.
It did, yes. If people want a longer explanation of how this works, I don't know, Google the implies logic function or go to our Discord and scroll back for quite a ways at this point.
Or you can control F for some of these phrases.
That's true, you can.
So, I mean, yeah, the people on our Discord are smart and chatty. Have a good time. It's great.
If you control F for the sidewalk is wet, that will bring you to this discussion.
Awesome.
Finally, Muggosofer says, in Pathfinder canon, Ottlemens is one of the greatest of the inevitables, which are a kind of divine construct created to enforce some universal law. So she was a golem/robot kind of thing before she ascended to god or demigod status, which possibly explains the whole being rebooted from Meta Ottleman's comment.
Oh, okay,
as
cool.
Opposed to just they're in a simulation.
Yeah, see, we thought AI or something like that. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so this is the sort of stuff that I wouldn't mind having in here's what you need to understand to enjoy this kind of section. Because I played a Pathfinder campaign once, and we didn't get to any lore. So, if this is written for a subsect of nerd that I am not yet in, then this is just too far beyond the weeds, right? So
yeah, that's an interesting thing. We have a policy of any official Pathfinder lore does not have to be spoilered because it was written long before and it's part of the world, right? We don't have to discover it through reading. But Pathfinder canon lore is just plane crash pre-material that was written by someone who isn't Eliezer or Kelsey, right?
Right.
So yeah, I think I'm feeling better about our spoiler policy of just put it in spoiler tags if it's Glowfic that came out before.
And some of it, I like to. Well, who was it? Because they deserve credit for putting it that way. Numendil. That Glowfic is high context. There are a number of epicycles you have to be in to really, you must be this tall to ride. I think I'm definitely not tall enough to ride this, right? So there are things I'm going to need to get caught up on or just kind of stumble about. But yeah, I mean, just the subsect of people who have heard of Pathfinder is already pretty small, comparatively, right?
I suppose compared to the population,
right? Compared to people who maybe have heard of Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So, then the people of that who have heard of Glowfic is probably the same percentage as small, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the people who have read previous work in this niche is probably some chunk of people who read Glowfic, actually. But it's so many layers deep.
Alrighty, well, shall we get into the teeny text?
Yeah, it's a quick feedback request on this one. Are we spending too much time on feedback? Let us know.
Yeah, that would be good to know.
All right, let's jump in here with, I think, my favorite god so far.
Oh, Aurory's your favorite one?
Yeah, he's great.
Ah, cool. How come?
I think because I can relate to him the most, because he used to be human. But, I don't know. I like Ottlemans a lot, too, just because the constant, panic. But Iori basically just chatted his way to being a god, right? He put in the hard work, he bench pressed and hit the library until he became a god.
Oh, chatted with a D. I thought you said chatted, like
Oh,
talked.
no.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's pretty baller.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like, just got to be one or touched a magic rock. Nah, man, that's lazy.
Right?
This guy just pumped iron, like he just pushed his way to the top of Mount Olympus.
He's awesome.
Yeah.
He, at the beginning of this, noted... Oh, my notes here say, because I wrote this note to myself as I was reading, Iori notices Keltham sends as the same deal that Abadar sent. Turns out that's wrong. He didn't notice Keltham. But Iori notices a squirrel on the mortal plane and sends as the same deal that Abadar sent him. And Az tries to negotiate him up a bit, but doesn't get very far, because as Iori points out, Asmodeus' tendency to selectively accept contracts on which he can screw others over, a tendency which Ori needs to take into account when offering prices, is something that he takes into account. If Asmodeus wants different prices, he needs to become a different kind of being. Iori would be overjoyed to explain the relevant changes if Asmodeus is interested in correcting his flaws. I really love this because, first of all, I thought that he was very deftly avoiding exactly the sort of thing which would have screwed him over, because we thought that he was all negotiating for the same person and basically giving Asmodeus more money for literally nothing, since Asmodeus had already agreed to this. But he managed to mostly avoid that screw over because he had this rule about Asmodeus, and it's just a great example of reputational effects and why it's important to not be a shitty person, and Iori's rule really helped him out here.
Yeah, if you live in a small town and you have a reputation for being a shyster, people are going to be like, yeah, everyone, you pay 10% more than other people because you suck, and you know that you suck. And
see,
when you suck less, you'll get the fair price.
Well, in a small town, it's probably people are doing that, yes, out of spite and wanting to punish someone for being shitty. But in Iori's specific case, it's because he knows that he would not be getting a deal at all, because Asmodeus just does not make those kinds of deals.
Yeah.
If Asmodeus is agreeing to something, then that already, by the very fact that he's agreeing to it, is evidence that this is a bad deal for the other person in the bargain.
Yeah, that makes you wonder why you'd even ask. Well, I guess you have to ask because it's his domain, but you've got to be very careful when working with this guy. I like it. But yeah, he was identifying Carissa Savar.
Yes.
And I called it. Because
you called it?
When he was saying, Iori says, the mortal's current teachers shall not be killed by Asmodeus or his dispatched agents for a period of at least 1 year. And I said, the mortal's teachers, is Iori not talking about Keltham? And then Asmodeus says, that squirrel. Everybody sure does love that squirrel. And I was like, oh, it is Keltham. Well, at least Asmodeus also thinks it is. Teacher could also be referring to Carissa, I suppose. But I'm giving myself the point because I caught the teachers thing.
Absolutely. That's really cool.
And yeah, it makes a lot of sense, I think, because Carissa, because we knew that Iori became a god, right? He wasn't just like born one. Mm-hmm. And Carissa has been talking about how what she's learning is making her more godlike.
Yeah.
And when he's like identifying her, it was something about he spotted somebody who's, starting down the path or something. It was capitalized, I think, or emphasized. The path or the way or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was surprised. I was not expecting it to be Carissa. I had the same feeling as when he goes, seriously? That one? And I was like, yeah, whoa, that was a great, awesome little twist there.
Yay. Well, and also Asmodeus, gave into a deal that he thought he was being able to, double dip on that. Yes. He's like, shit, I thought I was getting a cheap deal here, but.
And instead, he thought he was just like skimming a little extra off the top, little bonus, and instead he agreed to protect Carissa for a bargain basement price. I mean, maybe not bargain basement, but cheaper than he would have wanted.
I actually, as far as, so he apparently has a reputation for being a bad deal maker, but I'm curious, like, I'm trying to think of an absurd hypothetical. Let's say I'm learning to play drums, and my neighbor on my left side says, look, I'll give you $20 if you don't practice on Friday nights because I want to go to bed or something, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. Then another neighbor says, I'll give you $20 if you don't practice on Friday nights. Am I a dick for also taking that $20?
I would say no.
Well, so that's what Asmodeus thought he was doing here, right? He thought he was just getting paid twice to do the same thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. What if you try to talk him up to be like, well, I really, man, that's my prime drumming time. Do you think maybe like $40?
If I haggle both of them up, like especially the second person, yeah,
Yes.
and I'm an asshole.
Yeah. If you're haggling up the second person, that might be an issue.
Right.
Which is what Az was trying to do. Oh, it's real. I also, okay, so Az was being written by, Iori was being written by Eliezer, Az was being written by Kelsey, and when Az ends with, seriously, that one, and then it goes back to Eliezer, and he throws it back to Keltham at this point. He's like, okay, back to the lunchroom. What kind of lunch facilities do they have here? And I thought, like, this was really great, because that post where he throws back to Keltham and is like, okay, let me know what's going on here. Let's continue in the Keltham timeline, is 1 minute after the interlude with the gods going back and forth. And like, I assume that Eliezer, as they're writing, had this idea to get Iori involved in Carissa's storyline. He's like, oh, Carissa probably would, be influenced by Keltham to seek some god powers. And if that is in her subconscious, then Iori's picking up on it. I'm going to put this in the storyline and throw that out to Kelsey. And I'm going to do that by having a tag with Iori right in the middle of this and just having a little interlude. So, like, he revealed that plan to Kelsey in this back and forth, and I'm assuming surprised her by it, and then at the end threw it back and was like, all right, cool, let's go back to the lunchroom now. And it was just great watching that happen, and delightful to see Kelsey rolling with it and continue playing.
I agree. The conversational, like, bantery format that this medium allows for consistently sparks joy for me. Like I said, it was a minute later where he's like, all right, back to this, because I wanted to do that. And I've been thinking of this more, or previously I was thinking of this more like Kelsey DMing the story and Yudkowsky playing it, right? Really, they're both kind of DMs here.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the meta rules are for this, because, like, if halfway through the conversation, I guess you just roll with it. You yes and improv. Like, I was going to say, if, like, halfway through a conversation between whatever, Keltham and Carissa, if, like, Yudkowsky jumps into, like, a long Aurori thing, I guess you just roll with it. You jump in at that, and then, yeah, Kelsey might be thinking, well, okay, I guess he wants to see what'll happen when two gods are competing over Keltham's attention or something, and neither of them are the god who clericed him. And so kind of played along, and then, aha, sneak attack, it was Carissa. And so it's like, oh, where's this going? So now they're both kind of playing, right?
Yeah.
They're both playing and running the game. This is a lot of fun.
I love it.
Yeah. Keltham reminiscing about how fucked up things are here. And it says, sometimes Keltham wishes he was someplace that was not Galarian. And I put sometimes in quotes, like he's reflecting on weeks or months and not 24 hours.
It's been a very full 24 hours.
It definitely has been. It's been, 5 or 6 weeks for us, but
yeah, like, but yeah, for him.
Yeah, he got here literally yesterday. It's days like this where I wish I landed somewhere else.
I enjoyed that the girls thinking amongst themselves were thinking that their classmates are their competitors, not their friends. I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I guess that just a reminder that this is hell after all. There are no friends in hell.
I look forward to, like, what's fun is, like, it kind of, it's like Slytherin house, right? Yeah. But then you see how much worse it is, and it makes it all the more delightful, like delightfully awful, but great. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, in Slytherin House, do you think you could have had any close friends, allies? You probably could have had some that you trusted. It depends on what kind of Slytherin. Like, like Draco said, there's Slytherins and then there's Slytherins. Like,
I was just going to say that.
You couldn't ever trust a Pansy Parkinson, but you probably could trust a Draco if you became close enough friends with him.
Right. Or, who was it Padma? Which one?
Yeah. One of the Patils was a Slytherin.
Right. Parvati. Yeah. Who knows? I can't remember anymore. But yeah, it's there are the good ones, and then there are the not good ones. Here though, like, and I guess same in Slytherin House too. It'd be like, you don't know if the person coming to you in a good faith attempt to, like, hey, look, we can actually get twice as much done if we work together. You don't know if they're actually going to fuck you over or not, right?
I think it's worse than that. I think that even if you trust that they don't want to fuck you over and that they are your friend, like, ultimately it's not their choice. At the end of the day, you may be sorted by competence and, like, the bottom half of the class is killed or something. and so you're going to compete to not be in that bottom half.
There's
And you have to make sure that you're better than all the other people you can be better than, even if that means sabotaging them a little bit, so that you don't get caught up in that thresher.
it's like every competition, like survival style show or survivor style show, where it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, we're going to team up until we like can't anymore.
Yeah.
But at some point, we're going to turn on each
Exactly.
other, and I'm going to try to make that
Yep.
moment very opportune because I only get one chance to betray you guys and have it really count, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
If I were ever to go on a show like that, I would just, before I went in, because they have this line, I'm not here to make friends, right? Like, if I'm going into something like that, I am there to make friends. That is why I'm going, and I'm just going to accept that I'm not going to win the thing, and I'm going to have fun for as long as I can, and then I will get voted off, and that'll be a wonderful life experience.
And I think if you kind of broadcast that from the beginning and just like, look, I'm not trying to win. I just want to hang out and have fun with you guys. Then they wouldn't see you as a threat for the crown, and they might let you hang out and, play longer.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
I mean, that's assuming that they're all, playing smart, which I don't think they
Yeah.
often are. But I can't even.
That's also assuming they believe me, which honestly they'd probably be foolish to do.
Right. They shouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other people are like, yeah, me too. I don't want to win either. This means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Discussions on hell.
Yes. So they explain what hell is doing, why all the torture, although he still doesn't know there's torture, but we know there's torture.
He's talking to, is it Carissa or the students at this point?
I believe it's one of the students,
Okay.
or these students in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Saying that what hell is doing is, or maybe it is Chris, I don't know, is shaping the way your intuition brain works. And shaping the intuitions requires suffering because it's the language that our subconscious speaks. And that is true. That is a good point. But also your subconscious speaks M&Ms. And so you could train it with M&Ms or other nice stimuli because they probably don't have M&Ms in hell.
I mean, they could I mean, I'm not an expert on training through reinforcement, like reinforcement learning, I mean. So it's not impossible. And I initially put it as positive versus negative reward, but it's actually reward versus punishment reinforcement. Because positive is giving something, negative is taking something away. And the thing you're taking away could be something that they don't like. So it is like a reward in that sense. It means addition or subtraction, basically. It was counterintuitive, but that's actually neither here nor there because none of them use that language. I just did and confused myself. But or when I was writing my notes, I made it clear later. But the maybe it is better to hit people to make them learn faster than to give them M&Ms. But I don't. Maybe the reason that we don't do that, in American schools is just because people didn't put up with it. Right. Eventually, the kids get big enough to hit you back, and they're not sufficiently scared by like the school system that they won't all gang up and kill the teacher.
I don't know because up until I don't know early 1900s, corporal punishment was totally a thing, and I heard of very few teacher lynchings.
It's a 19th century or 1900s. I mean, this was a thing through the 90s in some states.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Okay.
I think it was probably in the 70s or something where they stopped being able to hit you with a paddle, at least in Wyoming. But in any case, it's more recent than you think. But you're right. I think that's where it stops, though. It's not being hit with a paddle sounds like terrible, but it doesn't sound like quite what these kids are going through. They seem more afraid of something else.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
There's a larger threat implied than like I'll just hit you harder, right?
Yeah,
because half these girls will turn over and say yes, daddy. So like they're clearly not afraid of being hit harder.
So he has a line saying his research harem is probably just discussing strategies for seducing him or something. He walks into the lunchroom. They're over in a corner talking amongst themselves. I think it's like a throwaway joke line kind of thing. Although when I read it at the time, I was a little rubbed the wrong way. I don't remember why. I'm not sure if I was grumpy or if the context was a little or whatever. But, I was thinking part of the disconnect, like your disconnect specifically, and also mine in this particular line's case, with Keltham acting like he is very attractive to the ladies. I mean, he is obviously very attractive because he brings this knowledge, but maybe our disconnect is the fact that the face cast, the actor, is like really young, and just in general, young males tend to be super low attractiveness, and so it's like hard for us to buy that he's really desirable,
Yeah, I mean, leaving aside the fact that he's right, that is what they're talking about. I don't know if that makes it better or worse or is neutral on it. Like my initial response was like, no, despite me not liking his face, I don't think that's it. But I did like spend an actual couple minutes thinking about it. And I don't know about like the generalization that young males are super low attractive. Although I don't like Keltham's face. It's nothing personal. It's just I think it's always got like this cocky like kind of face. It's usually like a low camera angled up, so like it looks like he's all like big. You know what I mean? And it combined with his attitude and stuff. Some of it just rubs me the wrong way, but I think part of it for me is that I'm still sort of imagining Harry James Potter Evans Varys, which makes this horny harem thing all really weird.
Oh, that
Like,
would be weird.
I don't think the guy who's playing him is. I don't think this picture of a person is really young. Like I'm going to guess 20s. Every actor's in their 20s, right?
That's true.
Even the ones who play kids.
Yeah, common joke among high school movies.
Right. Used to be 30s or 40s.
Yes,
they're like clearly balding, you know.
John Travolta in fucking Grease.
Right. That movie, for anyone who just look at the cover of that movie again and remind yourselves that movie took place in high school.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, that's okay. They didn't even try before. Yeah, I don't know. It's I'm coming around to it now that I don't know. I don't know why. I feel bad like putting the person down. It's nothing like against the actor as a human or even as an actor. I don't know who he is or what he plays in. It's just something about the domineering like arms folded leather jacket, grumpy face, meh. And
it doesn't work for him. Is
No.
the thing. Like I think like his face is attractive. I think he's a good looking dude, but like I almost suspect that maybe Eliezer intentionally got photos of him looking slightly awkward, like a slightly bad angle, or in the transition between facial expressions or something, where he just never quite looks right. And I mean, I can't say that like the leather jacket is a bad fashion choice because this is a Hollywood movie, right? They put a lot of money into their costumes. It's got to be a good cut or whatever.
This might be a low budget TV show. I have no idea who this guy is.
Oh, maybe. You know what? Good point. I don't know. But it just does not look right on him. And it actually makes him look worse because the cut does not flatter him. It doesn't seem to do it. And I think maybe this was intentional on Eliezer's point that this is an awkward, socially clueless person. And all the pictures are really going to reinforce that kind of thing.
Yeah, especially like a brooding _1. Or no underscore, just brooding 1. Like his haircut's not doing any favors either.
I know. All of them are they're slightly, you can tell there's an attractive person there, but it's not working with the picture.
Yeah, it's buried underneath. I'm not even like someone who's very, not until I took the Guild of the Rose alpha course on fashion was I even aware that hair was like, or of the small things that fashion really does play an impact on, including your hair and presentation and stuff. And I'm seeing it like, I can even see it in movies. It's like, God, this would be great, except for that haircut, man. Anyway, that's enough shitting on this guy. I mean, again, the guy's great. I'm sure he's a great actor, yada, yada. It's just, I think, but as far as the choice being intentional, that could well be, right? I like that when reading something, when in doubt, assume it was on purpose. And if this guy's coming off a little weird, it's like, well, he is weird. He's a fucking alien. And it's supposed to be kind of like, give you kind of like an askew sort of feeling, right? So I can dig it. Yeah, I like that.
I kind of think that says bad things about me and my ability to still be hacked by my subconsciousness, that like I look at a person and just or a picture and just the general vibe I get from the picture makes me think things about them that I wouldn't consciously endorse. But yeah, my subconscious doesn't care about that. It's just like, oh, that is an awkward looking young male nerd, obviously low status. Why would you put up with him thinking that he can get a bunch of ladies on his dick?
I wouldn't feel bad for letting your subconscious influence or like, have a voice, right? Like, I mean, you're aware that other people do that too. That's why you wear clothes that fit, like it's just, that's how people are.
I agree. I really hate that.
It'd be nice if like you could see more of a person more than just like what your eyes show you when you looked at them.
Yeah.
But until we can do that, we just got to go by the eyeballs. So, and then remind ourselves, through reflection that what you're seeing is just, what they look like.
Yeah. At some point, you really got to read Liking What You See It's a short story written by Ted Chiang that is literally about this whole how much it sucks that our cognition is so controlled by whether someone is attractive or not.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Liking What You See, a documentary. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I will read it later.
Cool. All right. Moving on. Oh, we found out a great thing about Dathalani schools. Keltham asks when he's trying to figure out how schooling works on Galarian here, if they don't want to expend effort to learn, because he's like, why are people being punished if they don't learn? If they don't want to expend effort to learn, why aren't they just goofing off somewhere else instead? Mean would be making them expend effort per unit of learning, which implies that Dathalani does not have compulsory schooling. You go to school if you want to learn stuff, and if you don't, you go goof off somewhere.
I started replying there, and then I didn't actually finish. I don't know why. I did this during work today, so I must have got distracted. I started saying, I took this to be saying that, which meant that I was going to disagree with you. But I don't remember what it was. I mean, I think it was like, maybe that, like, Dathalani students enjoy school. And so, like, the question is, like, actually, is just rhetorical. It's like, no, they actually want to be there. Otherwise, which I guess you're right, makes it non-compulsory, but it doesn't mean that not everybody does it.
Yeah. No, because they were like, why are you making them expend a lot of effort to learn? People just want to coast through school. And he's like, well, if they don't want to expend effort to learn, why are they there at all? Just go somewhere else. You think if you can just go somewhere else, then it's not compulsory to go to school, right?
I mean, yeah. Like, I guess compulsory has a sliding gradient, right? Like, you know, you don't have to finish high school to get a job. But it sure does help.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, but I mean, Dathalon's definitely more sanely structured than that. But I'm just saying, like, you know, here on Earth, no one's putting a gun to your head. It's just
I think if school wasn't compulsory here, schools might be better because they would try to actually attract students.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Could you imagine, like, if school wasn't compulsory, they'd be competing for your attendance?
Yeah.
Like, the handful of schools that do that are awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they hit on some awesome school beats here that I'm like, oh my God, like, I forgot some of this stuff, and I feel it so viscerally now. Especially towards the end, I pulled out a quote like that. But cool. Oh, you rolled a disbelief here. I disagreed. Let's see. 6 minutes would take you from the outer edge to the city, or to the center of a city.
Yeah. So he says that it is. I guess he doesn't directly say it, but the implication here is that generally you can cover 8 miles in 6 minutes in a city. Just get from the outer edge to the center. That is about 8 miles. You do it in 6 minutes. What? Is there no traffic at all? Is there only one person with a car in Dathalan, and he has the run of the streets, which were all made just for him? Like, no way, man. I roll to disbelieve this. If there are streets, then they are being used. I mean, maybe there's an insanely good public transit system, but even then, walking to the closest subway, waiting for it, jumping on the train, getting off, and then walking to your destination, it's going to be more than 6 minutes.
Imagine, well, first, I guess, so 8 miles is how far across the cities are. So if he's going from
8 miles is from edge to center.
Right, so only 4, which cuts your incredulity in half.
Wait, did he say 8 miles across? I thought it was 8 miles from edge to center.
I think he says that this, like, later on, something about the city is 8 miles across. But he's like, why is it 8 but not 9? Something about property, yada, yada.
Okay. You're right, so it's only 4 miles. So that's not nearly as... I mean, still a lot, but not nearly as much.
Oh, wait, no, but in the thing where he's talking about, he says 8 miles or 6 minutes will take you from the outer edge to the center. Oh, yeah, so, okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah, 8 miles, 6 minutes. Which, again, 100 miles an hour, super easy to do with modern cars, but not in a city, because you can never get up to that speed.
So, if you had really fast, fully automated cars, I think this would be totally doable. You jump in, it is, runs on great programming, knows where every other car is, and it just punches it straight into the flow of other cars, right? And there's no stop signs because they don't need to be, because every car knows where everyone, where they're all intersecting and stuff. Like, just picture like a perfect simulation of cars running through a city. You
would have to have no pedestrians.
I think that was in my reply there. Saying pedestrian walkways with that caveat too. I say this is plausible. But
I do not see it as plausible.
That's fair. So either he's wrong, Yudkowsky got lazy, or he's misremembering.
I mean, I think there's I think there is a argument that Eliezer would make as to why this could totally work. I just don't believe it. Like even awesome mass transit is going to have multiple stops along the way. You aren't just going 100 miles an hour from the edge to the center. You're stopping to pick people up, which is why it takes, longer than 6 minutes to cover 8 miles in the world's best subway systems.
Okay, so let me just I thought I could do this quickly, but
Either you have stops along the way, and that takes longer, or you have a single direct route, which means individual cars, which means congestion, which means you can't get up to 100 miles an hour. Because there's 10 million people in the city, he said.
right. Although, didn't he say on the... Oh, yeah, that was the city, not the planet. Okay, yeah. I feel like we're bogged down in this a little longer than necessary, but I do feel you. It's a fast... It's implausibly fast.
Yeah. And I feel kind of like a jerk, because you're right. I like assuming that the writer, whoever, is a genius, and there's a really good reason for this. It is so hard for me to believe this specific claim. Maybe I am lacking in imagination.
Just for, sanity check, though, if they're only going 4 miles in 6 minutes, that's only 40 miles an hour.
But they're going 8.
No, they're going from the middle of an 8-mile city, a city that's 8 miles across. They're going from the outside to the middle.
You have to walk 8 miles. You might have to travel 8 miles to school.
Oh, 8 miles or 6 minutes
minutes
would take you. Okay. Well, so then they're going, let's see, I guess twice that. Yeah. So 80. I mean, okay, that's stretching it a little bit.
I mean, 80 is not hard to do mechanically. It's just hard to do with other cars on the road.
And it's hard to, punch to get to that speed, because that's assuming with no acceleration or deceleration, right? So,
right.
You can get going to 80 miles an hour really fast and comfortably. Yeah. I rented a Tesla last year for a trip to Steamboat Springs in the mountains, and it wasn't going to be a fun trip, and it was a long drive. So I was like, well, as long as it's going to not be fun, let's add some flair to it and and I rented a Tesla, which is only like $10 more a day than like the other car they had there. But anyway, that thing, I think it's like 0 to 60 in 2.2 seconds or some shit. Like nice. It feels so smooth. So cool. you throw a world full of Eliezers at the problem for another 100 years. I think those things would be super fast and super comfortable.
Yeah.
So,
and even in a gas-powered engine, it doesn't take that long. 20 seconds to get up to that speed instead? That's not that big a deal.
If it's 20 seconds, your car sucks, but point taken.
Yeah. I had a shitty car when I was a teenager, and I would regularly go down from my suburbs into the city at 100 miles an hour, and I'm lucky I never got a ticket for that.
I'll say.
But yeah, it didn't take very long to get to 100.
My first car was like a 1985 Buick Park Avenue, which is like a grandpa car, but it had a supercharger in it.
Oh my God.
It was hilarious.
You have a supercharger at that age.
I have no idea. Well, I mean, or maybe, it's definitely just like, it's like the kind of car you sell to retired people. But I don't know why it had a supercharger, but it did, and it was hilarious. So that car was a good time for the 3 months that it lasted. So, all right.
Well, back on more awesome things. Keltham has a section where he really agonizes about giving disease-reducing technology to these people for free. He's like, disease sucks, dying sucks. All of this is awful. I want to just give this to them for free so they can get it as soon as possible and not have to die and be miserable. And that really made me fall in love with him a little more, that he was really wanting to do that for them, despite the fact that it would cut into his profits.
He said maybe this information should be given away for free after all. He hasn't sold on it yet. It's not like he's fighting for it, right?
Well, that's true, but when you read it, the emotion behind it is there,
He's enamored enough with the idea of saving lives that he's considering not charging for it.
Hey man, it's a big step for Keltham.
Hey, it's a step. I'm just saying, it doesn't push him all the way to sainthood, but
Yeah.
No, I feel you though.
But then he quickly gets dissuaded from this idea because he says any information which spreads about curing childhood diseases has to be harder than information about growing food, because if the reverse is true, chaotic countries will grow twice as many kids as they can feed, and then storm the lawful countries and take their foods. And Carissa says, actually, there's a bunch of places that don't do agriculture at all. They just pirate and raid civilized people. But I don't know how they'd be affected by there being less illness. illness is contagious, probably whatever you've got for it, it would just be better for everyone because the pirates are going to spread illness to the awful people too. Um, Honestly, I think maybe this whole holding back the key to curing illness from the people that aren't celiacs or that aren't lawful countries might be a really good idea because yeah, it's bad to suddenly have twice as many pirates and barbarians trying to kill your dudes and take your foods because they can't grow their own.
But you'll
And
you'll be
if that
you'll,
means
you'll have twice the numbers too. Oh no, because you're constrained by how much food you can grow, plus how much food you
and
can
they
grow
aren't.
for the raiders. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's
it
definitely
sucks that
a dynamic that would not be as simple to solve as just waving your hand and Well, the other thing too is he was talking about. I'll let you finish your thought. Sorry.
Oh well, I was just gonna say like it really sucks using illness, disease, people dying, childhood deaths especially, as a way of keeping the barbarians in check. I think death is bad, and using it as a tool is just awful. But on the other hand, what choice do you have? The only other choice is using death to kill their warriors when they come to attack you. So either way, people are dying, and this way, less of your people are dying. It sucks. It's a shitty situation, but I think I'm on board with keep the childhood diseases around until these people learn how to grow food. I don't know. It's shitty to say out loud.
I feel like you could probably do both at the same time, especially depending on how low the fruit is to pick for disease curing.
Yeah.
Like, so if the solution to like a third of these child deaths is just wash your hands,
Hmm.
then I feel like that's the sort of thing you should be telling people about, right?
What if it increases deaths of lawful people by 30% because now there's all these extra barbarians
I I'm
attacking?
I'm kind of sus on Carissa's whole story here, just because like a civilization that has a whatever an empire with schools and like not just schools but like universities and textbooks and classrooms and training places, they don't have better mages than the raiding pirates. Like if the pirates are busy all day, beating people up for their lunch money, like they don't have time to be going to advanced magic courses.
And it depends on how magic works in this world, which we don't know yet.
Oh, if you do just get better by like if you get better at magic just by using it on people, then yeah, they
Yeah.
might they might if I forgot it might be experience points. Okay, yeah. Well,
Hmm.
then this might be complicated. Um,
Yeah.
but this was a line from Keltham where he's talking about like why farming is harder than curing diseases.
Mhm.
And he says, because you need many ordinary people with incredibly low intelligence to do correct, complicated things on their own farms for half a year, instead of a few above average people who are slightly less stupid to be doctors and do correct, complicated things to kids.
Mhm.
Uh, so, I mean, that's an interesting way to phrase the problem, and he's kind of right.
Mhm.
Like, it. We're, all of us are just the schmoes who took the COVID vaccine, right? We weren't like
Mhm.
the geniuses who invented it in a weekend,
Right.
right?
Right.
So it is lopsided that way. But his phrasing, it's saying things that way that make him sound unlikable sometimes. And I know that he's from a smarter society, and saying someone has low intelligence like shouldn't feel like a personal attack on them any more than saying
Yeah.
that they're short. But it does
Yeah.
sound that way here on Earth, because
Ah.
it's a more or less immutable characteristic about yourself, and uh, it's just like saying someone's unattractive, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
look, that's true of some people, but
Yeah.
saying that is mean, And I
See.
realize that like it's stupid that it's mean, and Dathalan is beyond that kind of stupid,
Yeah.
but it's just, I guess it's me, it's his alien talk jumping out at me, right?
I I am less inclined to agree in this specific case because he is talking to Carissa. If he was talking to the actual people, then I hope he would. I mean, I do not think Helpham has a lot of social intelligence, so maybe he would say it that stupid way to the low intelligence people. Uh, I would hope at the very least that he would phrase it more nicely for them. But seeing as this is Carissa, who is equally smart, equally able to face the world as it is and not necessarily think worse of people just because they are lower intelligence, I think he's safe saying it in this situation, and so I don't feel like it is a blow against him.
I feel yeah, and I'm aware of my feeling being like not just unfair, but like wrong.
Hmm.
But it echoes that way. It's like how
Hmm.
some people found Harry to be like super off-putting, and he
Yeah.
was almost he was like even at his most off-putting, he was never this off-putting,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
I get what those people were saying, who was like
Yeah.
Harry's like a little dick, isn't he? I'm like, no, he's great. So I think I they were seeing Harry the way that I'm seeing Keltham, where you've got to like consciously push past that. Uh,
Well, yeah, and I think the thing I really like about rationalist spaces is that often you can just say things that are true, and it's not necessarily assumed that you are trying to make moral claims based on saying those things. Like when I said that the chaotic countries maybe should still continue to have childhood disease because it keeps their numbers lower, and that is net good for the world. I'm not happy about that. I don't think that's a good thing, but I feel safe saying that in a rationalist context in a way that I wouldn't in the greater world, because then people would be like, oh, you're for children dying of diseases? That's horrible. How could you do that? And I'm like, no, look, if we have to choose between worlds where people are killed by violence or where people die of childhood diseases, I think the latter is the worst one,
how dare
or the
you
former is the
make a
worst one.
situation where you have to pick between those worlds? You're a monster. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I feel you. There's a lot of like stupid grounds to cover when talking with people who aren't like wanting to talk on that kind of level of dialogue, right?
Yeah. And so
Um,
that's why I'm more charitable to people saying things like, you got to have a lot of people, ordinary people with low intelligence to do this. And that's going to be hard to do, even if it does sound mean.
I think there's also the modifier of incredibly low because like it's but it is compared to him,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I get it, but it's just again it in from my society growing up in on on American Earth, uh, like it that's mean. That's needlessly callous, but
Mm.
it's to him it's like he's like no I'm communicating the information like correctly with as like little time as possible, like to couch it in niceness, right?
Yeah.
Because
Like,
you need many ordinary people with intelligences that are several standard deviations below ours, who I'm sure are great, and love their kids and are have lots of interesting hobbies. But you need them to like he didn't waste all
yeah.
the time with all that fluff. But
Right. Like, would you trust I don't know, a mechanic with an IQ of 60 to fix your car?
I mean, it. I would feel better. I would feel better with my car in the hands of a mechanic who wasn't IQ 60.
Yeah.
Um, so it also depends what's wrong with it. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
point taken. The thing is, the fact that I'm hemming and hawing makes me feel weird because like I know that
Mhm.
I should be like, of course I want the smarter person taking care of it, but that's well, it's because it. I was going to say it makes me sound like I feel like I value the smarter person more, but then I kind of actually do because I want them working on my car instead. But then that
Mhm.
seems like mean because then that is where like it actually directly correlates to somebody's value. And like yes, I know that it actually does, but that's not. It's just not nice.
It's certainly not nice. Yes,
Just because it's
that's
true
not
doesn't
very
make it
nice of you,
nice.
Hermione. Yeah,
Thank you.
I.
That is not the only time I thought of Hermione this reading.
Aw, yeah. I don't know. I don't think. I think that we should definitely draw a bright line between economically valuable and valuable, like as a person, moral value. They're very different things, and I think this is going to be extremely important in the near future as more and more humans become economically not valuable as AI replaces us all.
Yeah, I mean, we could dig into that, but we'll do that on a another some other topic, maybe a base blast or something.
Hmm.
Because I've got more to say there, but we've got to push through.
Oh,
But not,
interesting.
but well, I mean, in short, I mostly agree with you, but I think I could make that even more just like disconcertingly complicated.
All
Um,
right. I'm looking forward to this.
all right. So, but as far as like couching your language in niceness, he's totally capable of doing that, as it turns out. Because
Yeah.
he's like, why didn't the gods just like make people like give people instructions on farming? He's like, if I were Asmodeus, I'd tell people how to set up prediction markets for that sort of thing instead of just having to bug him all the time. Is Asmodeus just a sufficiently strange being that he can't easily calculate what bits of simple advice would make humans more competent and less weird? So he's able to ask, "Is this dude fucking stupid?" Politely when he's talking about a god.
I think he was already told several times that gods are so incredibly fucking smart that humans aren't even on the same scale as them. So he's taking it as given that he isn't fucking stupid, that there's some other thing preventing him from using his smartness.
But then, like, you keep seeing all this evidence to the contrary, like all of his followers, being, starving to death and getting sick from, not washing their hands and whatever. And it's like, he can't tell his priests, how to make soap. Like,
apparently not. Like, if you are assuming that the guy is a super genius, you got to look for other explanations, right?
Well, but that's what
at some point you're going to stop assuming that.
Well, if I was Keltham, I would start to question whether or not these deities were actually super smart, right?
Yeah.
He's like, all right, well, if I was really smart, I would find a way to communicate to the squirrels, right?
Maybe he would question that on day 3.
I don't know how to talk to squirrels, but if I made it if I actually cared to, I'd figure something out, right?
Would you? Maybe if you were a super genius.
If I was even smarter than I am, and I don't know if I could talk with them. Well, if I could talk with them at the level that the gods can talk with humans here, which it seems to be giving direct orders, right?
Yep, sometimes.
And if the direct orders could just be I'm going to send you an ambassador from hell, do what she says, right?
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, because the whatever devil lady was super smart, right? It could just be as simple as do what she says, or I'm going to send you all to the bad place, right?
Yeah.
So that and I thought of that in 2 seconds. So there must be some explanation beyond that, or the gods don't care about people, or they're stupid. So
yes, total tangent, but he can't threaten people with sending them to the bad place because everybody goes to the bad place.
I thought there are different afterlives.
Well, yes, but everyone in Cheliax, since it is his country, is going to go to hell because he rules hell.
Right, but they're looking forward to it. So it's like, I'll send you to the place you don't want to go.
Oh, I'll send you to the good place.
Or,
which sucks for you.
Yeah, one of the ones where just you guys will be less happy, then you guys will be less happy being animals than you will be being tortured into being, better servants for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think? Does Dothalon not have cool drugs?
I'm sure Dothalon has cool drugs because it comes from Earth, and Earth found a lot of cool drugs way before the history block-off happened. But yeah, he says that they only use mind-affecting drugs to teach young adults how to go on thinking well when their brain gets mildly challenged. So they only use drugs as a way to teach you how to keep thinking even when you're on drugs. Unless you go to the store of illegal substances, or whatever they called it.
The shop of ill-advised consumer goods.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm sure they have alcohol and weed and LSD and all the stuff there, but not. It sounds like people just don't do drugs for the most part, and this made me sad for Dothalon. They have no sexy people. They have no drugs. Next, I'm going to hear that they don't have any rock and roll. Like, what is even the point?
I mean, in my head, I've got Keltham as 18. Did it say that somewhere, or am I just?
I think something late teens. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe because he's still finishing school, he hasn't a chance to go shopping at the shop of ill-advised consumer goods. But if they don't, Dothalon officially sucks again, unless they do sell super ecstasy there, and he's just too much of a nerd to have heard about it yet. Right?
It's true. He may have just not heard about it.
I mean,
I'm sure it has S&M too, but he seems to have no idea what hair pulling means.
That's a good point. Well, that's just because I think he's, he talks a big game, but he gives off strong version energy.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that explains the hair pulling thing at least. But do they not have pornography? No, I guess they do, but it's why would you look at porn when you could be spending the time reading more textbooks? So
I mean, porn might literally be an info hazard because it makes it harder to focus on not porn things.
I mean, it definitely is that, right?
Right.
Maybe that's why they burned the world down 100 years ago.
Oh, too much porn?
The world will be twice as fast if there's no porn. Let's erase history and no one ever thinks of porn again. Got it. So the keepers, they're the only ones that
they have the porn stash. They are the keepers of the porn.
That's right.
I love it.
Headcanon.
I think technically it was because seeing super sexy people makes it harder to be happy in a relationship with real people, right?
I think there are probably some downsides to porn, but I'm not a scientist, so.
Well, I mean, I think that was their justification for it. He said, right?
Did they talk about that?
I think so.
Probably.
Is that not what he said?
Maybe they did. I might have missed it. I did read this a week ago.
maybe that was something I picked up from the channel that wasn't spoiler tagged properly.
That's totally fine.
Or maybe it was just conjecture.
Well, either way. So he finally asks, like, okay, you guys keep mentioning hell. What happens in hell exactly?
Carissa says, very diplomatically, it's aimed at changing how human instincts and intuitive processes work to be more lawful. It is pretty common for people to say that it hurts at various points.
Yeah. She pulls out this whole thing. She says, like, my great-grandfather complains about it, but he complains about everything, you know?
Right?
Sure. It's common for people to say it hurts at various points, like seeing something very, very bright when you've only ever seen dim things, or stretching your legs and you've been sitting for 1,000 years. And, like, she sure sugarcoats the hell out of that, right?
Uh-huh.
It's interesting that she's spoken with, or, like, spoken to somebody who allegedly spoke with her great-grandfather. Because they mentioned, like, how you can resurrect people once they've been in hell for a while. Maybe you can actually talk with the dead, or, you know, maybe that devil lady, if I forget her name, we called her Elle. Maybe she does go to hell and back, and she's like, oh yeah, your grandfather says he's still annoyed that he's in hell.
Right.
But
this whole being tortured thing is very inconvenient.
But the way that she talks about it versus, like, you know, what we know, or what we believe we know is going on in there. Either she is, like, I think it's a bit of both of her deliberately obfuscating it and, like, her actual framing of it, right?
Yeah.
She actually does think of it this way because she's so fucking brainwashed.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Wonderful. That's wonderful that she's so brainwashed. She probably just straight up believes it, like you said.
She might actually believe that, right? She might not.
Yeah.
She might not be sugarcoating that much on purpose.
Yeah.
She's just like,
yeah, humans are always complaining about getting tortured, but, you know, real life is pretty torturous too up here.
Yeah, it's the only way to get better.
Yeah.
So we talked about Irori already at the top about how he ascended to godhood by achieving mental and physical perfection.
Hell yeah.
Which he did gradually, so like a boss.
He did. That is awesome. And that leads Keltham to think about the difference between the Soul Stone and Hell. And the Soul Stone instantly makes you, like, idealized, awesome version of yourself, whereas Hell takes several centuries of processing. He says, I'm not at all sure I'd take instantaneous over gradual, even if something ended up more powerful at the end of the instant. There's not much point if the thing that becomes the god gets changed so fast that there's no continuity with the old you. That got me thinking for a while, because we've been thinking of hell as something that tortures you into being someone else, just like by breaking your mind or whatever. But we change slowly over time in real life, too.
We've all been tortured out of being children.
Literally true.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if we know where we're going to end up along the way, still maybe jumping straight to the end point there isn't great, and the journey is important for retaining your personhood.
I think I like the answer because it's consistent with Yudkowsky's writings on utopias, you know, that you don't want just to skip to the top button. Like, gradual improvement is something humans really, really like, so keep that in.
Yeah.
However, I think in Keltham's case, I guess what he's saying here is he's not ready to die to save 10 billion people. If he's okay losing his personhood, if it meant that he could solve everyone's problems at the end of the week rather than waiting for centuries or whatever until he gets really good the slow way.
Yeah.
I would just, you know, like, all right, I'll become a god. I will have, you know, might not be continuity per se, but I'll always remember that I was who I was before, right?
Yeah.
I just won't identify closely with that person. But then I'll be able to, in a single sweep of my arm, solve the world's problems. But the fact that Rory isn't doing that suggests that there's something convoluted preventing the gods from doing that sort of stuff.
I mean, if nothing else, there's a bunch of other gods,
I guess,
that could team up to, you know, stop you.
That's stupid. See, then why don't they want people to flourish?
Because they all want them to go to different afterlives?
I guess the gods just, like, suck. It's probably the answer to a lot of this.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well.
You have a niece now, right?
2, and a nephew.
And a nephew.
The niece will be 5 tomorrow.
Awesome. Is that the oldest of them?
Yeah. Or yeah, I guess the oldest niece.
Yeah. If the niece, like, could be snap-fingered and turned into, you know, prime of her life, adulthood version of her tomorrow, that would still feel weird to you, right? It would feel like the 5-year-old version of her somehow got eliminated, killed, even though the adult version is an extrapolation of that?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I mean, there's also, like, some level that you have to be able to cross intellectually before you can understand what it is you're consenting to, right?
That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
if I could tell her, like, hey, if we press this button, you can be, as tall as your mom, and you won't have to ask for help, getting stuff out of the cabinets, and you can eat whatever you want. You can
Mhm.
stay up late playing video games, but you'll have to go to work, which can be a bit of a drag.
Mhm.
Like, she wouldn't really know what she's giving up, right?
Yeah.
But like in the hypothetical where she did, it would still totally be killing that person, right? The only reason that like I have any semblance of continuity with or any semblance of identity with younger me is that there's continuity.
Yeah.
If there wasn't, that would just be like this weird thing that I have memories of, right?
Is that not what it is? Isn't the past just a weird thing that you have memories of?
I think because there was some gratuity or gradualness going on that
Yeah.
if it was a snap from 10 to 30, right?
Mhm.
Then I would have, like, with no gradation in the middle. You know what I mean? That gradation helps me understand, because I can relate to the person, I can relate to me of 1 year ago, and I have memories of me of 1 year ago being able to relate to me of 2 years ago, down the line, back to somewhere along the way. I'm not actually the best example of that because I don't remember my childhood that much. It's not like it was
Right.
traumatizing or anything. It was fine. It was just maybe it is that continuity or that sense of identity or whatever, but something didn't stick the way that, like, I'm told about stuff that happens or that happened to me, or like, hey, remember this? And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll take your word for it.
Mhm.
That happens regularly.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yes.
Keltham has a cool moment here. He wins me back over after being, mean to dumb people. He says, I wouldn't step into a portal back if you opened one in front of me. Neither a good Dothalani nor an evil Dothalani would do that in the end. Only a weak one, and I don't aspire to be weak.
Hell yeah.
Like a boss.
That is fucking awesome.
Carissa comes back with a zinger. It's very rude saying things like that when you still haven't worked out a payment agreement with our government so people can fuck you.
Oh, that was awesome. That is like such a good pickup line. Like, she is on top of this game and he is floundering like crazy about it. He tries to come back with a good, I don't remember if this was here or later, but he tries to come back with a good sexy flirtation, and in my opinion, just flopped really badly. Again, it doesn't matter. Any pickup line is a good pickup line if the person is into you already, right? You're just walking over there to acknowledge that you see each other and say hello. But, whew, man.
That's a really succinct way of putting it. That any pickup line is a good one if you're already into the other person.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I mean, as much as it would be nice to be like, whatever, swept off your feet by something, poetic and captivating. If you're already into the person and then they're like, hey, you want fuck? And it's like, oh, you know what? Yes, I would. Thank you. I appreciate you asking. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. His what was the word you used? His pickup line back or whatever was not exactly, I think, like, it's exactly what I'd expect out of Keltham. He's like, oh, I haven't figured out the benefit of your breeding program, like intelligence alleles. Like, that's not exactly sexy talk, right? So,
Oh, I don't think he was trying to be flirtatious and sexy at that point, but later on he did. He was like, I am too lawful to do that. Oh, yeah, it was about the grades thing. He's like, I'm too lawful to allow our sexual relationship to influence your grades, but I'm not lawful all the time. And I was like, I thought personally that was terrible. Maybe that's good, but it can work if someone already is inclined to want to take your dick.
I mean, somewhere somebody said that to somebody, and it was like super romantic for them, right? They're like, "Oh, that got me so hot." Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, talking about the not going back into the portal, or not going into the portal to go back to Dathalan, because he doesn't aspire to be weak. He talks for a while. Not talks. He thinks a little bit about how in Dathalan, you can take a large object or an institution. I think we were talking about cities in this case, and ask why it is the way it is, and get a sensible answer about the ways it's optimal. Why is the city 8 miles across but not 9 miles? Oh, yeah, here we go. Here's where it says it's 8 miles across instead of 8 miles to the center. Oh, well. Anyways, he says, because the property prices in the core would increase like so, and the benefits of the edges would decrease like so, market forecasts, etc., etc. And he's like, he finds that very annoying, and you get the feeling dispiriting. The way he describes it, yeah, it sounds like in Dathalan, there's really no more alpha left to explore and exploit. Everything is highly optimized, and I guess That's great on average, but there's nothing exciting left to do. Like, excitement comes from risk and trying to figure things out and not knowing how optimal things should be done already.
What do you mean when you say that there's no more alpha left?
I just picked up on this term a few weeks ago. It's kind of a cool term.
It's
It
not. It's
appears
not
to,
just low hanging fruit, right?
yeah, alpha is like the ability to exploit differentials for financial gain.
So it is in that sense low hanging fruit. But yeah, all that stuff's been picked by the 6-year-olds who are all taught decision theory. So he says to the point that he found it annoying. Like what? That everything made sense? Oh, he found it annoying because he couldn't find an easy problem to solve.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, then find a hard problem, bro. Come on.
I mean, it sounds like even all the hard problems have been fixed. Like, there's just institutions to take care of all of this stuff now. And maybe if you want to work on a hard problem, you get to join a large institution and help chip away at something. But it's not exciting and glorious, you know?
It's not the same thrill as like whatever being the person who discovers the structure of the atom. Yeah. No, I feel you.
Oh, here we go. In technical terms, alpha is the excess return on an investment after adjusting for market-related volatility and random fluctuations. It's the extra stuff that you can get if you're good and smart.
Or lucky.
Or lucky, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so actually in this case, it is I guess it's kind of all three, but it is just the lucky for him, right? He wanted a world with more alpha, and it's like, well, man, wish granted.
Oh, yes. There is all sorts of dysfunctions here that someone needs to clear up.
Yeah, or he wanted a world with more opportunity for alpha. So
we're back to the flirting, sexy talk. It says he can't come. He's trying to indicate that he's interested in her as well. He says he can't come right out and say this next part. It just feels too weird not to put some level of indirection in it, or he doesn't come straight out and become the petitioner for sex. This made me laugh a little bit because poor Keltham, he can't stand to diminish his bargaining position, even when it comes to sex.
I'm reminded of like when Harry would kind of retreat to sounding all technical and stuff when he was under emotional duress or something stressful was happening. And like not every time, but I remember that happening a few times. And maybe that's what Keltham's doing here. Like really, he's just afraid of like asking the pretty girl if she's into him, right?
Yeah.
But he's like, well, I can't diminish my bargaining power. It put me in a weak negotiating position. So when in fact, really, he's just like, again, scared of talking to the pretty girl.
Yeah. And he even like acknowledges that he's scared of talking to the pretty girl, but then he goes on acting and thinking like that's not what's motivating him to not be more direct and assertive about this.
It's it makes me wonder if he's actually as self-aware as he thinks he is, or if he's like and so like then that if he is as self-aware as he thinks he is, then that would mean that he's right. It is actually just his other concerns that are holding him up, right? His bargaining power. But it seems like it's not that.
Maybe I was just primed because you asked what his age was, but self-awareness does take a lot of time and a lot of experience to get to. And I think there's lots of times, especially when you're a teenager, when you have some levels of self-awareness, but not quite enough. So you can say things that like, oh yeah, I realize I'm motivated by fear of approaching the woman here, and then not actually act like that because, self-awareness comes in shades and stages. And I gotta remind myself that he is still like right at the beginning of being an adult. He's only been an adult for a couple years now, and it takes time. It takes practice. I got to cut him some slack here.
I'm glad I'm not the only person to experience that. I definitely came online as a sapient being gradually. And like, I remember, sometime in my 20s looking back and be like, man, that was fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like anyway, so I'm glad it wasn't just me.
Yeah.
It would be weird if it was just me. So, not exactly surprised. I'm still just glad about it.
I'm still doing a lot of work trying to like find myself and understand how I work. And like, dude, he's only 17. I gotta give him some slack.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it never stops, but at some point you get,
better,
some level of sufficiently competent at it. Yeah,
exactly. You can go to working on self-awareness problems that have less alpha.
Exactly.
I don't know if that sentence made sense, but I'm sticking to it.
Yep. Because we don't. Yeah. Chris's comment here, or thought here rather.
Oh yeah, that she figures out that he's asking whether he would be making a commitment to her by them having sex because he doesn't want her to think that he wants more than he does. And when she realizes that, she's like, "Oh my god, that is adorable." And I thought it was really lucky for him that she thought his fumbling was cute. One of the many advantages of being young. You're like, oh yeah, he's a teenager. Got to cut him some slack.
Do you remember the next line or like the next sentiment?
I don't think so. What was it?
Because I didn't take that adorable to mean. I took it to mean like, oh, he thinks that, like you're about to fuck somebody over. You're like, oh, he thinks I'm gonna give him a good deal. Because the next line she says,
oh,
because the very next thing she thinks is also completely ridiculous, but she's not going to laugh at him. I guess that plus all the evil talk and lying about hell, it's got me wary of her.
yeah. It could be read either way.
But either she finds him adorable, adorably naive, or adorably, adorably naive in one way or the other way. You know what I mean?
Right. Is he adorable naive as something to fucking care for, or is he adorably naive as a very easy exploitable victim?
Exactly.
Yeah.
She's also thinking that somehow she expects Keltham to be distracted by the revelation that in Cheliax people lie to get laid. And I can't really imagine such a dystopian society, but it sounds awful.
No, that's terrible. I'm glad that such a thing would only exist in hell.
Right. And Keltham's talking about, like, in his whatever very Kelthamy way about what if our feelings get hurt. And this is where he definitely, whatever. It takes him a paragraph to say that. But he wants to be very, very precise. And then Carissa is thinking that she's pretty sure getting heartbroken is the only thing that can happen if you make the mistake of caring about other people, or at least about other people think of you. And
damn.
Vathalan didn't suggest an obvious solution of don't care about people, or expect them to care about you because they're good. Though she also suspects this is an unsexy thing to say. And all I can think of is the delightful voice actress you got to play Hermione when... I can't remember when Harry exactly was thinking this, but in his mind, Hermione was saying, "Didn't I tell you, Harry? I told you Professor Quirrell is evil." So now all I'm thinking I'm thinking that about Carissa.
Yeah.
Like behind all of this, oh, that's adorable, and oh, sure, I'm into you, I'm on to help. Is like, fucking idiot. You care for people? Sentiment? Yeah. You fucking fool.
Your reading has gained multiple points just now with this. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm just coming around to what it means for her to be evil. So
yeah,
I'm glad that she's explaining it, whatever, in her thoughts to us, which is helping me out. So what's weird though, it's just that, like, she's aware of the fact that it would be an unsexy thing to say, which is to say that, I guess because they have good people and she knows how they react to stuff. And so she's probably talked to the good people and then learned, like, what, you guys, you actually care about people? That's stupid, but okay, I guess I won't tell people that I don't.
Yeah.
So, because most evil people don't walk around thinking in their head, I am evil, right?
Yeah.
And these ones do, but I'm seeing, I think, kind of how that works.
I'm evil, but good is stupid. Good is worse.
That makes sense. Or rather, I understand that.
Yes, yeah.
I 100% disagree with it.
Yes.
And I don't know how Carissa can have an int 18 and still be evil, but I'm eager to find out.
Yeah. This is really interesting. Now that you pulled this out and talked about it, I'm thinking two possible paths I'm seeing for the story is either Carissa becomes the antagonist and he ends up having to fight her in the end because she's evil and he's not, and that would be fucking awesome storyline. Or possibly this is going to be in a redemption arc for her where she comes around to not being evil, and so we have to establish the evilness first so that there's something to redeem her from. Either one would be really cool.
I pulled this out for a later quote, but it works great here. "Dear me," said the old wizard, "I do feel silly. And here I was expecting you might try to redeem the heir of Malfoy by, say, showing him true friendship and kindness." Ha! Yeah, like that would have worked.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think if she's evil, she won't be able to be corrupted to being good just by being exposed to Keltham. I'm not sure if they're going to transcend the alignment system or find a way to meet in the middle, but I don't know if she'll be able to be converted just by showing her true love and kindness, because maybe we'll see. Yeah,
but or Keltham will find other ways,
or he'll lose,
or they'll fight and she'll lose.
Yeah,
many possibilities here.
Very exciting.
Hell yeah.
Oh, possibilities. Speaking. Oh wait, we're not quite to the hair pulling stuff yet. So
no, but Chris does say, where I'm from, promises are made explicitly, and sex isn't one. That sex isn't a promise, is what she meant there. Um, it felt a little bit weird for me, and kind of out of character that Dothalon is like so explicit and so ask culture about everything, except the idea that sex has all sorts of like hidden random commitments in it. Like they still think like sex has all sorts of hidden random commitments. Um, although I I took this note before I read further on, and now I kind of want to walk this back and maybe just erase it entirely from the podcast because, a bit later on, Keltham is like, yeah, we have learned through much hard experience that emotions happen anyway, regardless. So there's no way to separate hidden commitments from sex necessarily.
No, leave that in because that's an important inclusion.
Okay.
The fact that emotions happen despite saying no, we're just going to be friends with benefits. It's a thing that happens to good people, right? Not saying that people who have purely platonic sex are bad people, but if they don't understand that sometimes feelings happen, then they're evil with a capital E, right?
Yeah.
That's why to Carissa it's like it makes no sense. To him, he's like, yeah, people promise all the time that they want to have feelings, but then they do sometimes just because that we're humans, right?
Yeah, and you just got to be ready that might happen.
And Carissa is not exactly human, so
that's true.
She's evil.
She's alienish, similar to how Keltham is alienish.
It's great.
Yeah.
I already pulled out the quotes about his super virgin vibes.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I'm not dissing. I'm only dissing because he's walking around, with like all of his like, oh, they're all after my dick kind of stuff. But then he's like, well, he's trying to think of like some very standard Dothalani sex techniques that would fit the standard repertoire, and he didn't expand much because he had other life priorities, which is spoken like a true, someone who can't get any, right?
Yeah.
You don't have other priorities. You're a teenage man.
Exactly. He's all like, there's non-reproductive sexual acts that I have heard of. Dude, you go down on each other. That's what you're trying to say.
Oh, my first thought was butt stuff. The poop hole, loophole.
Oh, or butt stuff, yeah.
This is going to be interesting. The disclaimer at the top of the story, didn't say you should know Pathfinder lore or whatever. It just said there's a lot of like weird sex shit. Mm-hmm. And so I'm looking forward to using phrases like poop hole, loophole more. Which, if you haven't heard, is if you squint at the text of the Bible, is a way to have sex without technically violating the word of God. So, Yep. And it rhymes so nicely.
Carissa says, I'd rather live in this world than in yours, just like you would. Would you rather live in Dothalon or in Golarion, do you think?
It's not even a question.
Dathalon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm at the mercy of going to hell and being killed by pirates on Golarion, right?
All right, let me modify that. If there was no eternal torment afterlife, and it was just like regular life, but either everything is perfectly optimized and there's very little alpha in anything and kind of boring, but at least you'll be safe, or crazy world, you might get sick, you might die, pirates might kill you, but exciting and lots of stuff to do.
I think I reveal I appreciate that phrasing because it makes it harder to answer, but still easy. That I think I find myself leaning towards the safer life, like because that lets you enjoy so much luxury. And,
it does.
So it's like safe doesn't necessarily just mean hanging out in a, comfortable, clean room, perfectly safe from everything. It just means that like, you're not going to get hit by a car. You can still be exposed to scary ideas. You can watch scary movies. You can have difficult times through, like things that you more or less opt into, like romance, right?
That's true. Safe means that you don't have to really worry about STIs much as long as you're responsible.
Safe just means that like the world isn't going to fuck you over. It's that you get some say in how much danger you put into your own life. And I like that a lot more than Golarion. Even if it meant that if I lived on Golarion, I could be a wizard. Yeah. I'd be willing to give that up to live as a mere human on Dothalon. Or actually.
Yeah. Seeing as I have not moved to, one of the countries that is far less safe but more exciting, I guess I would also choose Dothalon, but gosh, it certainly makes for more exciting reading. And I want to think that I would choose to stay on Golarion if given that option. I think the Haremets research harem would certainly help motivate me. It would tip the scales a little bit.
Yeah, are you saying this with post nut clarity? Or are you asking this question with post nut clarity? Or are you discussing it, while you're pent up and it's still lunchtime? So, anyway, uh, I just read my further comment, but we're not quite there yet. I hope someone gets this reference. I'm going to just be an insane asshole. But your comment about sexy as hell, I want to get there first.
Oh, okay, yes. So Carissa says that she would rather have Keltham than not have him, like in a sexual way, even though I might get hurt on any given occasion, and almost definitely will get hurt looking out over all of them. And I thought that was really fucking sexy. I love the idea that, like, I want you even though I might get hurt, and I know for sure I will get hurt eventually. Because first of all, that's every romantic relationship anyway, right? But just the I want you enough that even though I know it'll hurt eventually, I don't care is really hot to me.
I would be inclined to agree, except for Carissa said that, and we know that she won't get hurt because she doesn't care about people. She's gasp lying to get him into the sack.
Oh no! Aww.
But any pickup line is a good pickup line if he's into it, right? Right?
I guess so.
This is not a pickup line, though. This is a commitment about feelings, or a discussion about feelings.
I guess what we're learning is that she is very good at seduction, and he could take some tips from her.
Well, maybe he shouldn't, right?
I mean, it doesn't sound like he necessarily needs to, considering he's got a harem already, like, laid out for him.
Yeah, his seduction tips will be offering people discount, 10% for whatever cup size.
But honestly, being better at seduction just makes you a better person, in my opinion. So he should do it anyway, just to level up his own awesomeness.
Well, but her version of seduction is straight up lying to him.
It's not a lie if she would mean it, even if she could get hurt.
I feel like that's a caveat that she left out on purpose. And in fact did. She said it would be unsexy to tell him that.
It would definitely be unsexy to tell someone I do not actually care about you.
And I'm basically incapable of it.
Well, or unless it was one of those, like, I don't care about you, I just want your dick right now. That could be sexy.
I suppose, but the fact that she's not telling him that,
right,
suggests that she's, I don't know, any deception involved is, even if, like, both parties end up happy with the arrangement, still, I'm not in love with it, right?
I get what you're saying, and I agree.
It's hard to put my finger on what's wrong with it, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think what's wrong with it is the deception.
Yeah, but, like, if at the end of it, Keltham's like, well, you lied, but I still got laid, and you got laid, and at the end, that's all either of us wanted. It's still, yeah, there was still lying involved, and lying is just not nice.
No, don't do the lying.
Yeah. So what's chaotic in Dothalon? Hair pulling? Like, she says that like it's very tame. And he's like, I've never heard of hair pulling. And
so good.
Now he's got to think of something surprising. And my first thought was, tell me if you get this reference. You like that, you fucking retard?
Is that?
I think it was a Reddit thing.
Okay.
Like, somebody misspoke when there was, like, their girlfriend was like, let's try and, like, do dirty talk or something.
Yeah.
And he couldn't think of, like, the right thing to say or whatever, and kind of fumbled, and that's what came out.
That's awesome.
And I feel like this has been referenced a handful of times over the years, but
cool.
Then it occurred to me after I thought of that and laughed to myself that if Keltham says that here, it might not just be a hilarious slip of the tongue, it may in fact be a literal question.
Oh damn.
Yeah. He's in a weird circumstance here.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see. Keltham is IQ 160-ish. Is it well, maybe we save this for another time where we're not 2 hours in, but is he allowed to have sex with a really hot IQ 70 girl who wants to have sex with him?
I mean, obviously.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean,
because in America, like, it's a crime to have sex with a mentally disabled person.
I don't think it should be if they are an adult and can make decisions for themselves.
Well, I guess the contention is that they can't.
I see.
He even says he can't morally judge them because they're basically children.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll save it.
You got to take a lot more care with something like that. But I think that sexually active adults, even retarded ones, would want sex, and telling them they have to live a life of celibacy is cruel. Which means that also it has to be okay to have sex with them, as long as you do it in a good way.
Yeah, I think that's a good succinct, sane, like, medium that should hit. I think like the reason I'm not sure what the laws are because I never had cause to look them up. But I think the reason that there's laws, or at least very strong taboos against it here, is because it's really hard to find the line, right? And line drawing is really hard in the law, so you just, or rather, finding the, or rather, it's super easy to draw lines. What's hard to do is like find the actual spot, right?
Yeah.
That's why you're an adult at 18, but not at 17 and 364 days.
Right. I just think the law's fucking lazy. The point is there's a massive power differential when there's such a big intelligence gap, and so it's very easy for a bad actor to take advantage of someone much dumber than them and leave them a lot worse off. But the problem there was that they took advantage and left someone a lot worse off. The problem wasn't just that they had sex. So what you want to do is punish the people who are bad and leave people worse off, and the law is like, that's a lot of work. We're just going to assume that anyone who has sex with someone IQ 70 is taking advantage of them and being bad and putting them in jail. And that sucks. That's stupid.
Well,
but
I specifically chose 70 because that's 1 in 50 people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's only 2 standard deviations, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's like those people here on Earth are having sex all the time.
Yes.
And so it wouldn't be a crime for like an average person, but because Keltham is so far above average, it's kind of like I mentioned, I think that Peter Singer essay that I haven't read in 10 years. So I don't remember if he asks this question outright, but like, is it wrong to have sex with a cow if the cow also has fun? And the answer is, well, I don't know what his answer is. My answer is like, I don't know. It's not my cup of tea.
That is not an answer.
I know. So, I mean, I think the answer is the answer is I get why the law is lazy about it, because it's really hard to tell if the cow is actually having fun in this, really tortured analogy.
Yeah.
So, it certainly doesn't know. It's not like agreeing to it in the way that 2 adults would agree to it.
But condemning people to a life of celibacy is also awful. And I think it sucks that the law is so lazy. It would just condemn people to celibacy.
I think that's a tight spot.
That's the worst situation, because smart people can get laid with someone else, right? But the person who can't ever have sex legally, it sucks to be them.
I mean, well, I again, not an expert, but I think that that they're allowed to have sex with each other.
I don't think that's any better. You don't want. I would prefer someone who is smarter and knows how to take care of someone to have sex with them, because 2 people that are that dumb having sex with each other are probably going to make things worse than if a smarter person is there to, I don't know, look out for things like protection or whatever that 2 very mentally challenged people might not be able to handle.
Cases that I'm aware of is that nursing homes are full of STDs because they're constantly fucking, even like dementia wards and stuff. And it's probably against the law. And again, I haven't checked, but I sure hope it's against the law for the average person to walk in and have sex with a dementia patient in a nursing home, right?
I would imagine so, yes.
I know it's against the law for their caretakers too, at the employees. So, but as far as I know, no one's legislating or monitoring that they don't have sex with each other, right?
Yeah.
It's try to use condoms, I guess. Maybe they hand out free condoms. I have no idea. Not because they're going to get pregnant, because they're all 85 and whatever. It's just to keep the gonorrhea under control.
I mean, fucking give him some antibiotics. Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know, man. A lot of this is speculation on stuff, and we've got 2 more pages of notes here. So,
all right, let's keep going. Quick throwaway fun thing. Maritzel says, anyway, if you're sleeping with everybody, then there's no question of it affecting anybody's grades unfairly. She is now my favorite of the students.
Oh, yeah. So Carissa goes off to, I think, actually eat lunch and do her homework. Now he's talking with his haremettes. He's describing public school. So now they're talking about learning and incentives and that sort of stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And apparently, the way that you teach kids not to touch stoves on Galarian is to let them touch one. Then they learn real fast. It's like they never tried just telling them not to touch them. They're trying to explain to him he doesn't understand it. It's the soul is wired to understand feedback from pain faster than it understands feedback from anything else. I'm aware you guys might not have souls. Maybe this just doesn't apply to you. Assuming that there is actual magic soul stuff happening and they're actually just doing it wrong, which is my assumption. Mm-hmm. It's no wonder that they're so twisted that Chris is looking forward to getting tortured into becoming a different person, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do think people learn faster and more intensely from pain than from anything else, but Also, pain sucks.
Well, they don't learn better,
That's
right?
true, especially not mental things.
Right.
They learn instinctual stuff.
Yeah. They learn to be
Yeah,
great automata, which is I think what the gods want.
exactly. Yeah.
So maybe because maybe that's the gods' end game. They don't want to like a bunch of like healthy people who live to be 90 after fulfilling lives who like don't want to become different people. They want people
Yeah.
who are like just like just not miserable enough to have kids and to put them into the whatever mm, soul changing factory, right?
Yeah. The gods are getting exactly what they want out of this.
Stupid
Hmm.
gods.
Yeah. I about the whole kids touching a stove thing. I think I don't know. Obviously, kids shouldn't touch a stove. But if there was magical healing where there would be no disfigurement, no permanent effects, and even the pain would go away pretty quickly, so all you'd have is the memory of the pain. I think touching a hot stove may actually be a pretty decent way of learning how to not touch hot stoves.
Apparently, on my first birthday, I reached out and put my finger in the candle on my cupcake or something. I don't know if I learned not to touch fire from that, but I bet if I did it a couple more times, I would have.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I think that intense pain leaves a mark, even if you like can heal the wound. If you're talking about healing literally everything, including like the mental scar that comes with being, in intense pain, then maybe. But
I
but then all you learn is don't touch stoves. You have to have them touch everything that hurts, rather than just explain to them like the dangers of things that be careful around sharp objects too. You don't
oh
also have
yeah,
to teach them,
definitely.
by cutting them, right?
Yes, but you're going to get cut eventually anyway. I've heard that childbirth is some of the most intense pain you will ever have. I have had some extremely intense pain post surgery in my life. Recovering from surgery can be fucking awful, but like I don't feel like it left mental scars, and I hear people don't get mental scars from childbirth either. I don't know if just the pain itself necessarily scars you up unless it's literally like being tortured, and then again, the thing that scars you up from that might be the fact that you're being tortured by another human rather than the pain.
It could be.
I don't know.
If there was like, some magic quick science answer, like, thing you can't really do experiments on because it's A, impossible and B, super unethical, I'd be
Mhm.
curious just to know, like, if cutting off the most sensitive part of a baby's dick is bad for them in the long run, even if they forget it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like that's one of their first experiences. Being born sounds traumatic as fuck, right? Your eyes
Mhm.
hurt, everything hurts, it's cold, like that'd be
Mhm.
so uncomfortable. And then the next thing you know, someone's cutting your dick off. Like, I think, uh, I think that might leave an impact, but I'm not sure. Childbirth, I think, is one of those things where like we're evolutionarily wired to like forget how much it sucks. And
Mhm.
I say that as somebody who has not and cannot deliver a child, so maybe I'm totally off the mark here, but uh,
Mhm.
it just seems like plausible that evolution would favor people having more than one kid. So
Yeah.
if they were fully cognizant of how much it sucks the first time, like
But why would that be the case just for childbirth? Like I distinctly recall thinking if this pain continues forever, I do not want to continue living, but I knew that it wouldn't continue forever, and I don't even really remember what the pain felt like anymore. I just remember that I would not want to keep feeling that,
yeah,
even if it meant dying.
maybe evolution selected for experiencing selves and remembering selves being different people, right?
Yeah.
Because yeah, at the time it was the worst thing ever. And now you're like, huh? I guess that I remember that sucking. I remember thinking it sucked.
Hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, lunchtime is impossible high stakes because they can't get it shaken from their head that this is a test and they're going to get. I mean, they seem to look forward to being whipped. I don't know what punishment looks like for them. I'm assuming something
Yeah.
terrible. Like maybe their backs are all covered in scars from being like whipped in a not fun way or whatever, hot irons or something. Like,
Yeah.
but he keeps trying to say like I'm not going to do punishment reinforcement, and they're like does not compute, and so
Hmm.
they're like, oh
Hmm.
god, he's this is going to be so bad if we give a wrong answer. He's like, there are no wrong answers. I don't know what that means.
Hmm. Because yeah, the pain goes to a deep part of you and rewires you there, right?
That's their contention, and I think they're probably right. So
I definitely think they're right. I think maybe that was one of the reasons that things like childbirth and the post surgery things don't really have much effect because yeah, it was intensely painful, but it didn't rewire anyone to avoid anything. It is not connected to a behavior that now you are terrified to do.
yeah, I mean, again, so it has the benefit of like, again, teaching you the instinctual flinch, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm not convinced it makes you better. Maybe I could be, but I'll have to think about it longer.
Well, I mean, in the opinion of the gods, it makes you better.
Right, and it makes you better at surviving because you're not going to touch hot stuff again or whatever. But I,
Yeah.
there has to be a better way. He
I
says, shaking his fist at
yeah.
the heavens. Well, and in fact, there
Yeah.
is. There demonstrably is because we do pretty good here on Earth, and Dathalan is thriving, and they don't do it that way, right?
Yeah.
So they do it that way here because they haven't thought of a way to implement a better way that doesn't suck.
Mhm.
You know, the people who give the grades are also the people who teach the class, and like they're around to bribe with sex. And he's like, "How the hell is that possible?"
Yeah.
So they're missing a lot of stuff that they don't have to miss here.
Yeah. Well, he tries to get them to at least say the words that if he is wrong, they can correct him. And part of the way he gets there is by discussing the concept of the Dathalani concept of dignity. He asks them, what is dignity in your opinion? And they give basically, I think, the answers we would give on Earth, right?
Yeah,
Things, staying composed when you're frustrated or frightened, that kind of stuff, acting like a serious, important person. Um, Keltham says, the one I had in mind is not getting angry at people for behaving the way they're supposed to, or in ways they have a right to do. Not showing outward anger, not letting yourself react inwardly in a way that would lead you to do something like lower their grades. It's the quality that you display to others so that they'll know it's safe to turn you down for sex. He also says that dignity, in the case of my relationship to students as a teacher, means that if I make my own mistakes on the whiteboard and you point it out, I don't even internally blame you for my mistake and give you a bad performance for you later. I, if we get nothing else out of Plane Crash, the fact that I have learned about this concept of Dathalani dignity has made everything worth it, because I absolutely love this. This is a concept I have been missing in my life, and I'm glad I finally have a word for it and just a mental handle to grasp on this thing. Like, there is such a lack of Dathalani dignity in our world. It sucks. I wish we had more of it. And it is, I don't know, it is not sexually attractive, but it is like one of the most attractive personality traits anyone can have, in my opinion, to be someone that you can feel safe telling the truth to and not have to worry that they're going to be upset and retaliate against you, even subconsciously later.
I like that, and it is nice to have a shorthand for that concept. One of the other aspects of it that he gave was that uh, it's not getting mad at people for doing what they're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm.
which isn't necessarily about telling them they're wrong or not. Like,
Yeah.
you admitted to driving like a maniac in your younger years. We all, I think, many of us have done that, and I certainly used to be a speed demon. And I remember the last time I got a speeding ticket, I wasn't even mad because I was like, no, I deserve it.
Yeah.
You're just doing what you're supposed to do. Like
Yeah.
so that fits that definition of dignity as well, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, yeah, you are doing the right thing actually by stopping me. I
Mm-hmm.
should not be driving like this, and you're just doing your job. Like anyone who's like mad at a cop for writing them a ticket for driving like a maniac when they actually were. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't maniac driving. I was going 60 and a 40 or something, right? But
Mm-hmm.
still, it's there. I like that too because it's it's a respect for people, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's kind of what that was my handle on this before. The dignity conversation is. I would call that respect.
Okay.
But I think what the difference here is, like, this is more internal to him or to the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in my own mind, subconsciously, I wouldn't even blame you, right?
Yeah.
Like that's pretty cool, and that might be beyond what might more reasonably or what might also fall under the umbrella of respect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a couple things here to pull out, and I'm not sure if they're in the right order or not, but it doesn't actually matter. So one of them was he's still talking to his Haramats, and he says, I vaguely remember being told about experiments where if you don't do that, by that I think it was have people actually say the wrong answers out loud.
Mm-hmm.
That people sort of revise history inside their own heads and aren't aware of the processes that inside themselves that would have produced the previous wrong answer. So if you don't make people notice that they're confused, they'll go back and revise history and think that they were already thought that they would have handled the questions perfectly fine. Basically,
Yeah.
it sounds like how on Dathalan they don't remember their history, and this is reminiscent of how Adathalan, they don't remember their history, and they're all perfectly sane over there.
Oh, oh man! So they committed this sin, or not the sin, this error on a massive civilization-wide scale.
I'm not even sure if I'm registering that as like a guess. It just it that's what came to my mind.
Yeah,
Was it's like, so this happens to a person, but all right, well let's talk about history revision, and if we just erase it all, then hey, we didn't get it wrong, right?
damn,
Yeah.
that nice connection there.
Well, it might be Pepe Sylviaing it, but we'll see.
I mean, if nothing else, it makes for great literary analysis to point out that these things are similar, and hey, maybe think about that, Dathalon.
They sound similar.
Mm-hmm.
Pepe Sylvia is an Always Sunny in Philadelphia reference.
Yes.
And then I like this one because this is just, this should be on the dust jacket of Rationality 101. Reasoning under structural uncertainty is legit harder and easier to screw up than reasoning when you already know exactly how you're supposed to think, which is boringly easy by comparison. You're going to suck at it for a while. If you arrive at the necessary truth that you must fling yourself into the sea, don't.
Yes.
So he's basically saying, like, because he harps on that a couple times, and like, if you decide that you've got to destroy the world, he's like, don't do that because it means you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Yes, somewhere along the way there might be parts somewhere on the path. There might be parts that look appealing, or where like the button to destroy the planet looks appealing, but that's just because you're not far enough on the path yet. Mm-hmm. So if you get that impulse, talk to me.
Yeah.
Like, seriously, come find me, he says.
Yeah. If you despair because this proves that all humanity is awful and there's no point in life, don't despair yet. The fault is probably in the argument and not in the world.
Yeah. I mean, this is actually, speaking of drawing tenuous connections to stuff, reminiscent of, I think, a lot of people's like loss of religion. When you have religion, you have purpose. Your life has meaning because you're told it does. And then when you realize there's no God and everything is permitted and the heavens are empty, then you're like, well, then what does it all mean? Is like, should I just kill myself? Then eventually you're like, well, no, I love my friends and family, and I'd love them whether or not God's there or not, right?
Yeah. It's a good thing you didn't kill yourself when you first despaired.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. I'm glad you pulled that out. I thought about it, but then I didn't, and I should have. You had a better take on it, though.
Teamwork.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of teamwork, he is trying to tell the ladies that they should let him know when he's doing something wrong, and that it was weird that none of them were ever confused during his lecture. None of them were visibly distressed or confused or befuddled or anything. And the girls say, yeah, yet no one in Cheliax is going to tell you that you're wrong. They don't say that part, but no one in Cheliax is going to tell you those things by being visibly distressed or confused. It does not work that way. They hide those emotions. And then he goes, oh, I was probably also trying harder and harder to bewilder you because you never showed any overt emotional signs of being bewildered. Like, okay, that explains a lot about that math lecture. And I really hope this means future math lectures will have less parts that are bewilderingly confusing and just make me have no idea what's going on and think that there's a typo.
What's cool about that too is this is reinforcement for the idea of author charity, where it's like, if we're confused, maybe the author wants us to be confused.
Yeah.
And this is him saying, yeah, that was supposed to be confusing.
This is a bad lecture because it was supposed to be a bad lecture.
I like
or not bad necessarily, but
right,
hard. Yeah.
Suboptimal. Like, I kept trying to get you guys to be confused. Yeah. You guys should be confused by now. Why aren't you guys expressing that? Yeah. I wonder if that would have gone differently if Kelsey had replied, well, it would have. It would have had to if Kelsey had one of the people raise their hands and being like, what the hell are you talking about? That's what he was trying to, that's all he wanted.
Yeah. He points out that Dathalani are trained from childhood to answer questions they have no idea how to answer. And on a really fundamental level, that is why that civilization now knows any stuff. And I think that is awesome because basically all Dathalani are trained to be scientists from the very beginning. That's really cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's the only way that you can face new questions, right? I think they got it right.
Yeah.
Oh, this was the school thing that I mentioned at the top, so I do have to read this just to get my blood boiling again. He
Okay.
says, Dalthalan has put this much massive effort by a lot of people with very high measured intelligence into optimizing everything important, which I don't think I really appreciated before. And in this world, somebody put the children's lessons together in a way where the person teaching them is also responsible for measuring the results. And nobody else is checking their measurements. And all the questions are supposed to be things that children have already been taught how to answer. And I'm like, oh my God, he's like summarizing the outside view of what school is so well. I remembered I don't like school, but this like put me back in the emotion of, oh yeah, I hated school.
Yeah.
It was great. This isn't the end of the reading exactly, but it's the last thing I pulled out. Him saying, do I disparage because things are hard? Hell no. He just has to rise to the challenge, make all the money, fuck all the women, and fix all the universe's deficiencias.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, he's got his priorities.
Mm-hmm.
Usually it's like make money, fuck bitches, or what's the
Right.
that meme. But his first is rise to the challenge, then make money and
Yeah.
have all the
Yeah.
sex. Honestly, it makes me think that Yudkowsky is hornier than I imagined, though I never really like thought about it much. But you've expressed similar sentiments, like when we were talking with who was our guide to Glowfic?
Oh, Miranda.
Miranda. I want to say Madeline. I knew that wasn't it. You were like, oh man, base Enosh planet would be so horny. And like,
Yes.
now I'm wondering if I'm just less horny than the average person, and you guys are baseline.
Because the fuck all the women thing?
Yeah, well, and like his constant focus on it throughout the story. But
Okay.
so if he's the baseline Yudkowsky, and you've expressed a
Yeah.
similar sentiment for yourself, and I'm like, I guess it's on the list, but it's not like number 3,
Huh.
or really number 2, because Rise to the Challenge is just like that's a prerequisite, right?
I think Rise to the Challenge definitely is number 1.
Well, but like you do that to make money and then have sex, right?
I think the challenge is the foremost thing. First, you want the challenge.
Oh,
That's-
for the challenge's sake.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I thought the challenge was just like, get things to the point where I have enough money to have all the sex I want.
I mean, they're all kind of interrelated. But just rising to the challenge for the challenge's sake itself is really cool and fun too,
Yeah. No,
Motivating.
totally.
I fucked all the bitches because they were there, like Mount Everest.
We do it not because it is easy, but because it is hard.
Truer words were never spoken.
I should have said we do it not because it is soft, but because it is hard.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right, we did it. We've ruined a Kennedy quote.
Yay.
I think that's about it. At the end, he goes off to the library, I think, not to study, but to go back for lecture 2, right?
Yes.
All
I
right.
think so. I guess we'll find out when we read the next section.
That's right.
Which you will find in at IMSIYUDT.com as episode 7, which ends with the phrase, crap, I didn't put it in the notes again. Boo me. Hold on, let me pull it up. Where is it? Here we go. Which ends with the phrase, he's going to try learning wizard spells with the last of his day. Well, his work day, anyways.
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
So he's going to go for another lecture, try and learn magic, and then he and Chris are going to have surprising sex.
I'm really looking forward to what a surprise sex act is for Keltham.
Hair pulling was beyond the pale for him. He is going to be flabbergasted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious if she's going to like try and go tame with it and only like pour candle wax on him and slap him across the face or something, or like, or if she's just going to go full like crazy. She's reining in like what they usually do over here, which I'm assuming involves like, I don't know, because they can do magical healing. They can do all kinds of weird stuff. I don't know. I'm also I'm very boring. I don't know. So, but no one should be reading on projectlawful.com, even despite them doing it there. And I'm glad they did. They should all be reading it on Keiko Likium's GitHub page. So
yes.
That's in the show notes here, and it's great.
It will be permanently in all the show notes from now on because it is so good.
Yes. All right. We don't have anything else to sign off on, do we?
Support us on the Patreon. Have a great week, y'all.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Good to be back.